Que l'on ouvre les portes, let the doors be opened. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The Honourable Member for Nunavut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, in response to my question, the Prime Minister said that all parties who were supposed to be at the table for the two Dene treaties are at the table. He was wrong. Since 1975, every modern land claims agreement in Canada involved the province or territory where the lands in question were located. Further, every modern land claims agreement in Canada's northern territories has involved three parties: the Indigenous group, Canada, and the government of the territory where the agreement is to operate. The two Dene treaties affect the jurisdictional authority and will result in financial obligations to the government of Nunavut, and also require amendments to the Nunavut Land Claims Agreement. They cannot be implemented without the consent of the government of Nunavut. So given the legal precedents and subsequent jurisprudence, I call on the Government of Canada to do the right thing and immediately invite the Government of Nunavut to the table as a full participant and signatory where they should be. The treaties will be stronger for it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellant. Mr. Speaker, today we mark International Volunteer Day and the importance of their contribution in our communities. Volunteers are people of heart who give of their time to promote, support, and advance causes that are close to their hearts. Moreover, volunteers help to make Canada a stronger, more inclusive, and prosperous society. So on this occasion, I'd like to highlight some of the volunteers in my riding who stand out for their commitment and their involvement in our community. Jimmy Theodore, Jerry McDonald, Naomi Panetta, Justin Boisvert, Vincent Camisaro, Gian Andrea Lacombe, Silvio Di Chico, Lisa Muzzo, Lynn Boudreau, Elisa Verrio, Saida Siddiqui, Robert Alexandre, and Nicolas Sordo. On this International Volunteer Day, thank you for donating your time for important causes. Thank you for making a difference every day. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, during the Christmas season, it is important to remember the organizations that go above and beyond to help those who need it most.
Yeah.
In my community of Oshawa, we are blessed to have the Gate 316 Outreach Center led by Betty and her outstanding team of staff and volunteers. Since 1990, they have offered hot meals, warm showers, laundry services, and much more to anyone in need. Having spoken with their patrons over the years, I know how valuable their safe and friendly space is to many in my community. Earlier this year, they found themselves without a physical location and they had to suspend services. I am extremely proud to say that they have found a new home and are back to serving the community. I stopped by last week to donate some supplies and had the opportunity to speak with their general manager, Rita. She tells me that they are thrilled with the new space and are excited to be back working with their patrons. On behalf of all residents of Oshawa, I extend my sincere thanks to the team at the Gate 316 and wish them every success in their location, as well as a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
The Honourable Member for St. John's East. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of my constituents, Thaddeus Dreer, turned 100 on August 23rd. He was born in Poland just before World War I ended and was an army officer and studying to be an engineer when Germany annexed Poland in 1939. After the war, he was able to continue his career as a civil engineer in Ottawa with the RCMP, and his other brother owned a bakery in Montreal. They convinced him to come to the best country in the world, and his work in civil engineering took him around the world, and the fact that he spoke so many languages was a true asset. Polish, Russian, Latin, Italian, Spanish, English, French, and a little Thai. Suri, his wife of 54 years, agrees that the secret to a long life is optimism and courage in the face of adversity and change. Happy 100th Thaddeus, you're an inspiration to all of us.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is losing more and more good-paying jobs. This past week was particularly bad in terms of job losses. In our region, it was the announcement by Hut Bay that it's closing the Flin-Flon mining operations by 2021. This follows the closure of the smelter and the refinery in Thompson earlier this year. Nationally, we've seen the closure of the Oshawa GM plant. We're seeing the hollowing out of the Canadian economy in key sectors like manufacturing and the resource sector. While our communities have been working hard to diversify and find other job opportunities, there can be no doubt that the loss of these good-paying jobs is devastating. Governments need to be there for us in tough times. They need to be there for Canadians. And the federal government has been largely absent. Despite the fact that the Flin-Flon operation is directly under federal jurisdiction, they've done nothing. So as Member of Parliament for our region, I believe that governments have to be engaged. The federal government must be at the table. These are tough times for northern communities and communities across the country. Our region and our country deserves better.
The Honourable Member for London North Centre.
Monsieur le Président, je prends la...
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to highlight the importance of the French language. It's one of Canada's founding languages. It's part of our identity, and our great country is stronger because it has adopted bilingualism. I'm so convinced of this that after my election as a Member of Parliament in an Ontario region where the vast majority of residents are English-speaking, I made a commitment to learn French. Today, I have recommitted to always being committed to promote the French culture and language, and I'd like to sincerely thank London's Francophone community for working tirelessly to preserve its culture. Thank you. Keep on resisting against Doug Ford's policies.
Honourable Member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to rise in this House today to pay tribute to the Jewish people and the celebration of Hanukkah. The word Hanukkah is Hebrew for dedication. The holiday commemorates the Festival of Lights when one day's supply of olive oil miraculously lasted for 8 days during the dedication of the second Jewish temple in Jerusalem. Now, last Sunday, I was honored to be asked by Rabbi Zaltzman to light the first candle on the menorah in Queen Victoria Park in Niagara Falls. At a time when people of faith are being persecuted around the world, celebrating our heritage and our religion is critical. I would like to thank Rabbi Zaltzman, the Shabbat of the Niagara region, for putting together this event each year. As the word Hanukkah denotes dedication, may we dedicate ourselves to ensuring religious freedom in Canada and around the world. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish a happy Hanukkah to my colleagues in this House and across the nation.
Honourable Member for Cloverdale, Langley City.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, recently I attended the Langley Community Justice Initiatives Association Gala. It's a community-based organization that administers programs and services in various areas of conflict with excellent results. It's a pioneer in this field. Marilyn Ferguson told her story of courage and transformation following her son's murder. I was moved to hear her talk about the fact that the association led her to meet 3 of the people responsible for her son's death. Her story demonstrates the strength of restorative justice and the results that this approach can produce. I'd like to thank her for her story, and I also thank the association for the important work it does in our community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Saint-Boniface, Saint-Vital.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Boniface, Saint-Vital. Last Saturday, I joined my Francophone community at the former Saint-Boniface City Hall for a rally in solidarity in support of the Ontario Francophonie. More than 200 people answered the call, young and old and new, Francophones and Francophiles. We were all united. We were all in solidarity. Organized mainly by the Conseil Jeunesse Provincial and the Student Association of our Francophone University of Saint-Boniface, This rally was a testimony to the commitment of the youth of our Manitoba Francophone community. The torch has passed from those who fought for our rights in the 1980s to the next generation, which is just as determined. Their numbers are growing. Their voices are strong and diverse. In the hands of these young people, the future of the Francophonie in Manitoba and Canada is assured. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Edmonton Riverbend.
Mr. Speaker, I want to put on record my opposition to signing of the United Nations Global Compact for Migration. We currently have an issue at our borders with an unprecedented number of asylum seekers entering illegally. We recently learned it costs taxpayers about $34,000 for each migrant to be processed, and this cost is projected to rise as more people arrive in the manner that the systems become backlogged. The current border crisis is expected to cost taxpayers over $1 billion by 2020, which doesn't include costs incurred by provinces. The costs associated with signing and implementing this global compact are unknown right now. Signing this compact could put an even larger burden on the backs of Canadian taxpayers. I support a safe and orderly immigration system and believe Canada must be in control of our borders. Signing the UN Global Compact does not give us control. Mr. Speaker, I strongly urge the government to reconsider committing our country to this global compact.
The honourable member for Calgary Centre.
Monday was the International Day of Disabled Persons. We celebrate the contributions of people with disabilities to our society. We know that many people continue to face many barriers to inclusion, and that's why our government introduced the Accessibility Act to transform the way government and federally regulated sectors remove accessibility barriers in Calgary and across Canada. The honourable member for Dorval-Lachine-LaSalle. Mr. Speaker, on December 6, 1989, 14 women were killed and 10 injured at École Polytechnique de Montréal for the simple reason that they were women. Almost 30 years later, the effects of this tragedy are still being felt. And this curse takes many forms. It could be sexual violence, online violence. It can happen in a subversive way, which includes but is not limited to acts of to maintain control over a person, such as defamation, coercion, and stalking. All this can cause psychological harm to the victims. Sexist violence is a subject which our government cares about, which is working tirelessly against this scourge. On December 6th, we will remember these 14 women who are cruelly taken away from their loved ones, and we denounce the tragic consequences of violence based on gender. Thank you.
The honourable member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are breathing a sigh of relief knowing that the Liberal StatsCan data grab has been held at bay. Now, Canadians rose up against this out-of-touch Liberal scheme to secretly access the personal financial records, and our Conservative team listened to them. We stood up for the privacy rights of Canadians, and we stood up for the principle that government does not demand Canadians' information, it asks Canadians for permission for their information. Now, the Liberals did not listen. They condescendingly accused Canadians of being fearmongers and digital Neanderthals. Well, Canadians won, and these out-of-touch Liberal elites lost. Now, Conservatives will hold these Liberals accountable, and we will remain vigilant in defending Canadians from this intrusive policy. Thank you.
The honourable member for Pierrefonds-Dollard. Mr. Speaker, I was born in Montreal, and even though I came from an English-speaking family, my parents wanted me to learn French. So They sent me to a French school. Then, when we moved to Toronto, my parents insisted that I continue my studies in French. So I attended the only French language public high school in the Greater Toronto area, Étienne Brûlé High School. Étienne Brûlé opened its doors after a long struggle by the Franco-Ontarian community. Its construction was completed in 1973, 3 years before I arrived. And in my time, students came from Oshawa, they came from Burlington and Orangeville and from elsewhere. We were a proud mix of ethnicities, which was so well captured in our school's slogan, Unity in Diversity. But we were also all proud to be Franco-Ontarians.
Honourable Member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
As the 16 days of action to end violence against women go on, women's organizations across Canada still struggle to pay their staff and keep their doors open. Vancouver Island University Students' Union, the Haven Society, Women's Resource Centre in Nanaimo Ladysmith, where I represent, every day they work to keep women safe. Every day they turn women away. Imagine you're fleeing domestic violence, you have the bravery to ask for help, but there is no room at the inn. These groups tell us if you're going to protect women, you have to fund our core operations. Liberals say they want to end violence against women. They're willing to invest in infrastructure for energy companies. Why not invest in the vital, life-saving infrastructure that women's organizations across this country provide? Actions matter.
That's it.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, this supercilious Liberal government bragged about letting the sunshine in. But we're sitting here in the dark dealing with even more of their secrecy and hypocrisy. The Liberals are saddling our air forces with flying pieces of Australian scrap metal, but they're claiming that's because of some non-existent capability gap. They're tarnishing the reputation of a distinguished Vice Admiral and dragging him through a criminal trial. But they spent months refusing to hand over crucial documents for that same trial. The information that the public is getting about Vice Admiral Norman's case is not from the so-called open and transparent government, it's from Vice Admiral Norman's lawyer. And thanks to her, we now know that a Privy Council investigation reports at least 73 people knew about the cabinet discussions, including 9 cabinet ministers and 2 reporters. The Liberal government must stop this needless witch hunt. If they really want to find the source of the problems, all they have to do is look around their own cabinet table.
The Honourable Member for Fundy Royal.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, last month I had the opportunity to welcome my neighbour, the Honourable Minister of Health, to the École des Pionniers in Quispamsis. The students and teachers at École des Pionniers perfectly demonstrate the vitality of Francophone minority communities in Fundy Royal and elsewhere in Canada. Those grade 5 students were proud of their heritage, and we have the great luck to spread the French language and culture in such a positive environment. The minister and I reiterated our commitment to them, and they know that their federal government will always support them and their language rights. So I'd like to thank the director, staff, and students of the École des Pionniers for their perspectives, their warm welcome, and the diversity they bring to Fundy Royal. We are always there to protect linguistic minorities across the country.
Oral questions. Questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister attempted to defend his Natural Resource Minister's ridiculous claim that the court killed the Northern Gateway pipeline. But the facts are clear. Just like in the ruling for Trans Mountain, the judge provided a clear path forward for Northern Gateway, saying, quote, "This process need not take long." But the Prime Minister ignored that ruling and killed Northern Gateway. Why? Because he's been fighting against it for years. So, if the Prime Minister doesn't want to accept responsibility for Northern Gateway being ended, will he commit today to reviving it and completing the process?
You're right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives spent a decade failing to get Canadian oil to new markets. On Northern Gateway, the Federal Court of Appeal found the previous government's consultations with Indigenous peoples, and I quote, fell well short of the mark. The Conservatives seem to think that the duty to consult is only a suggestion, not a constitutional obligation. They had 10 years to get the job done, and they failed. They failed for 10 years. We are moving forward on expanding to global markets, building pipeline capacity in the right way.
The Honourable Order, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, 4 major pipeline projects were approved by the previous government. Enbridge, Alberta Clipper, the Trans-Canada Keystone, Kinder Morgan Anchor Loop, Enbridge Line 9B Reversal. All projects that were approved, and here's the kicker, built under the previous Conservative government. Trans Mountain expansion won't access the deepwater ports that Northern Gateway would. Aboriginal communities were going to be partners in the beneficiaries from that project. Why did the Prime Minister kill the Northern Gateway project?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, 0% increase in pipeline capacity to new markets under 10 years of Conservative government. For the very simple reason that they did not understand that the way to build big projects is to work with Indigenous peoples in full respect and partnership, to work with environmental scientists and concerned citizens to demonstrate it's being done in the right way. They failed for 10 years, and now they double down on an approach that failed the oil industry and failed Canada.
Order. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It's this Prime Minister that has failed to get projects built. It's under this Prime Minister's watch that all the major pipeline proponents in this country have left and are building projects in the United States. And in the case of Kinder Morgan, with the $4.5 billion of taxpayers' money that he gave them to get out of town with. Mais, Monsieur le Président, à chaque fois...
Mr. Speaker, each time we ask questions of this Prime Minister about his disastrous trip to India, the answer is always, don't worry about it, no problem. But Canadians know full well there are problems. Will the Prime Minister finally respect them and reveal the full list of guests invited along on the India trip? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have always shown a commitment to the international context. We've always been open and transparent. And once again, I'd like to congratulate the members of the National Committee of Parliamentarians for the extraordinary work they did. We accept their recommendations, and we will continue to work and respect the excellent work they do. Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Questions have been raised about the role of the Innovation Minister and the member for Brampton East with respect to a questionable real estate deal. Now, the allegations also involve Liberal Party donors, a former Liberal Party riding president, and, of course, the Prime Minister's disastrous trip to India. Can the Prime Minister confirm whether his Innovation Minister has had any contact with any law enforcement agency or anyone in their offices, including the Prime Minister's office, regarding any of the allegations surrounding the member for Brampton East?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, for folks watching question period, let me explain parliamentary privilege. It allows members of Parliament to say things in this House without fear of prosecution or legal consequences. It's a foundation, an important element of what we do in this House. But one of the ways people at home who are keeping score can note whether or not something is serious or not is whether or not members opposite will repeat what they say in the House outside of the House.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Order.
Well, Mr. Speaker, and for the folks at home, what the Prime Minister is trying to do is trying to make it seem that what is being said inside the House hasn't already been said outside of the House, including by major media reports. But, this is what the Prime Minister always tries to do. There's nothing to see here. Nothing's been done wrong. He tried to do that with his illegal vacation to Billionaire Island when the Finance Minister conveniently forgot about the French villa and when one of his ministers awarded a lucrative contract to a Liberal friend. So, I'd be happy to ask the exact same questions outside the chamber. Will the Prime Minister stand beside me and finally answer them?
Order. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, again, for people watching question period, they notice that the opposition's job is to ask questions, to critique government policy, to make sure that what we are doing is exactly right for Canadians and to challenge us on it. And that is the role of Her Majesty's loyal opposition. Unfortunately, this current opposition tends to spend its time making innuendos, personal attacks, drive-by smear jobs that seem to consist of political debate. We are happy to exchange on ideas, to argue rigorously why our plan is right.
Order.
Okay, so I appreciate members' assistance.
Now, member for Musqueam-Nejet, Témiscouata-les-Basques.
Demain, Canadiennes et Canadiens vont dénoncer les...
Canadians are concerned about violence against women. It's unacceptable. And for some communities, it's a daily reality. For over 30 years, over 1,200 Aboriginal women have been murdered or disappeared. Mothers, sisters, cousins, aunts who disappear every year. Indigenous women's security and safety has to be a priority. Does the government opposite have an ambitious national plan to deal with violence against Indigenous women? The Right Honourable Prime Minister, I'd like to thank the member for his question and hard work. We are determined to put an end to this national tragedy of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls. The mandate of the Independent Commission is clear. Families have to be at the very heart of their work. We are committed to giving families the long-awaited answers and the support they need. We're also taking immediate steps. We're reinvesting in shelters for women, housing, education, reform to child services, and safe security along the Highway of Tears. The Honourable Member. Consultations and reports are all well and good, but it's time the Liberals realize that that's just the first in a long series of steps. Indigenous women are many times more likely to experience violence than non-Indigenous women. They shouldn't be considered second-class citizens. There should be a national action plan to deal with violence against Indigenous women. All the recommendations of the National Commission on MMIA should be implemented. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I would even say that the interim report that we are currently implementing and following the recommendations of, we shouldn't wait to deal with this issue of violence against Indigenous women and girls. We know that the National Housing Strategy will also help women avoid returning to situations of violence. We've created thousands more places in shelters, over 4,800 spaces in recent years. We know there's a lot more to be done, but we will continue the work.
Mr. Speaker, today I proudly joined our leader, Jagmeet Singh, the Public Service Alliance of Canada, and the PSAC National Indigenous Peoples Circle to stand in solidarity with all Indigenous women and girls who have been victims and survivors of violence. We must ensure that the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls leads to justice and healing. Will the Prime Minister agree to meet with the National Indigenous Peoples Circle to receive their petitions on the inquiry?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are committed to ending the ongoing national tragedy of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. The Independent Commission's mandate is clear. Families must be at the centre of their work. We are committed to getting the answers for which they have been about the systemic and institutional failures that have led to this tragedy. In addition to our substantive response to the inquiry's interim report, we are also taking immediate action with investments in women's shelters, housing, education, reform of child welfare, and safety on the Highway of Tears.
Member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, we do indeed need to make sure that the families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls are at the centre of this inquiry, are being heard, informed, and supported throughout the process. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Inquiry must lead to change. Will the Liberal government commit now to fully implement all the inquiry's recommendations?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we launched the National Public Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls because we saw there was a need for leadership. After too long, it had not moved forward. That's why we did that, because we know we need healing for the families, we need justice for the victims, and we need to put an end to this ongoing national tragedy. That's why we extended the time and the mandate of the inquiry to ensure that all families could be heard. We gave them the extra funding they requested, and we are looking forward to seeing the results of the important work they're doing. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, we're not waiting for that result.
The Honourable Member for Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Brampton's Mayor's Chief of Staff gave a confidential document regarding a piece of land that the city wanted to purchase from the province to the Minister and another member of the Liberal caucus. Now, a private consortium called Goreway Heaven actually purchased the land for virtually the same price that was disclosed to the Minister and this MP. The land was resold to the city at a tidy profit of 33%, and City Council has asked the RCMP to investigate. Now, folks at home may wonder, Mr. Speaker, why did a member of the Prime Minister's cabinet invite a direct...
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
It is the opposition's responsibility to oppose, to challenge a government, to disagree on positions of policy. Unfortunately, the members opposite choose to make personal attacks and drive-by smears. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, for those at home who want to see whether or not there is any substance to these allegations at all, they can simply watch whether or not the members opposite will repeat those allegations outside of this House, where they are not protected by parliamentary immunity.
Order. The Honourable Member for Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the company Goreway Heaven had 10 directors on it. 5 of those directors are known major contributors to the Liberal Party of Canada. As well, one of these directors was invited to be part of the Prime Minister's delegation to India not more than 1 month after they collected a 33% hike in the property that they had purchased, which miraculously resembled the price that was disclosed to the Minister. All we want to know is, from the Prime Minister, which Member of Parliament invited this gentleman on the trip?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, like I said, an opposition's job is to oppose. But with the fact that they are not asking us about the economy, they're not asking us about the challenges faced by Alberta right now, they're simply choosing to make the same kinds of personal attacks and smear jobs that characterize 10 years of Stephen Harper's Conservative leadership. We see that they actually have no new approach to governing this country, no alternative proposal for economic growth. They're still stuck in the same old approach the Canadians rejected soundly in 2015.
Honourable Député.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. Order. Mr. Speaker, a company executive with ties to the Liberals, including the Minister of Innovation, scored a sweet deal. He bought some land from the Ontario government for $3.3 million and flipped it a few months later for $4.4 million. Quite a deal. The deal was so questionable that the city of Brampton asked the Mounties to investigate. Now that we know that the individual in question was on the India trip, can someone tell us who invited him? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the role of the official opposition is to ask tough questions about what the government is doing. Unfortunately, this Conservative opposition is in the same mode as under Stephen Harper. Personal attacks, insinuation, inventions, casting aspersions on government members, instead of asking questions about our record on economic growth, which is excellent, or the unemployment rate, which is at the lowest level in 40 years, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, allow me to jog the Prime Minister's memory. This executive, Bagwal Griwal, is a former Liberal Riding Association president. He's made donations to the Liberal Party. He went on the trip to India and even took a selfie with the Minister of Innovation to preserve the memory forever. If the Prime Minister has nothing to hide, why is he waiting? Why doesn't he disclose his VIP guest list for the ill-fated India trip, which was paid for by Canadian taxpayers? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. An easy way for Canadians to see whether, in fact, the Conservatives are asking good questions, the right questions, doing a good job, is to see whether the members opposite are able to repeat the same allegations they're making here under the protection of parliamentary privilege, whether they're able to repeat those comments outside the House of Commons. And if they don't repeat those exact comments, Canadians will know that these are unfounded, baseless, personal attacks to try to distract from what good work we're doing. Order.
The honourable member for Chilliwack Hope.
Well, Mr. Speaker, you can tell when the Liberals are in trouble when they start threatening lawsuits and refusing to answer even simple questions. We now know that the RCMP investigation in Brampton involves Goreway Heaven, a company with close ties to the Liberal Party. One of its directors, Bagwin Greywall, a former Liberal riding president, got a prime ticket to the Prime Minister's catastrophic trip to India. Can the Prime Minister tell Canadians who extended the invitation to Mr. Greywall? Was it the Liberal member for Brampton East, the Innovation Minister, or was it the Prime Minister's own office who invited him to come along?
Honourable Prime Minister.
You know the Conservative Party is in trouble when it falls back on the same failed approach of personal attacks and smears that characterized them through 10 years of Stephen Harper, 10 years of low job creation and the worst economic growth since the Great Depression. What we actually have now is people trying to dig up stories around a trip that happened a year and a half ago as a way of attacking and smearing the government because they have nothing to say on our economic growth, on the job creation, on the way we're delivering for Canadians.
Order. As members know, each side gets their turn. And the idea is that we're going to hear things we don't like, but we listen and don't interrupt. Now, member for Chilliwack Hope.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we know this Prime Minister gets a little jumpy when we ask about Liberal ethics, being the only Prime Minister in Canadian history who's ever been found guilty of breaking the ethics rules. We know it was this Prime Minister's office who invited Jaspal Atwal, a convicted terrorist, to join him on the disastrous India trip. And the guest list for that also included Bagwin Greywall, a Liberal operative whose company is now under RCMP investigation. So will the Prime Minister give the RCMP all the documents relating to Mr. Greywall's involvement in the India trip, or will the cover-up continue?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me remind folks that we put in place the National Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, comprised of members from all parties in this House and the Senate, so that they could exactly look in and weigh in on these important and delicate matters. When it comes to the matter of national security in this country, we should have an oversight committee that can do that, and that's why we went and created them. We have tremendous respect for the work that they've done, and we very much support the important work they do. I just wish more people respected them.
Honourable member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, starting in January 2019, families will have to pay $411 per year for the same groceries, more for the same groceries as in 2018. And why? Because the Liberals failed through trade deals to protect our supply management system, and they have no plan for fighting climate change. The result? Food is going to cost more. People are going to, yet again, have to pay for the Liberals' lack of leadership. When will this government finally learn that its inaction is costing Canadians dearly? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we have put in place a historic, unprecedented plan to combat poverty in Canada. The Canadian Child Benefit, which the NDP voted for, is delivering more money to 9 out of 10 families across the country and has raised 300,000 children out of poverty. With the increase to the guaranteed income supplement for seniors, with investments, historic investments in affordable housing all across the country, we are helping families. But we recognize that there's still a lot to be done, and that is what we've committed to doing.
He truly doesn't seem to care about the impact of his policies. The reality is the price of food in Canada will go up 3.5% next year, with annual food costs for the average family to go up by $411. If you're on a fixed income or working for minimum wage, good luck in getting any type of healthy diet. And this at a time when Canadian families are struggling with the worst debt loads in the industrialized world. So when will this government stop giving big tax breaks to the richest corporations and bring in progressive policies that truly help all Canadians?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to see the NDP preoccupied with this, but if they had really wanted to fight against poverty in this country, they should have voted for the Canada Child Benefit that is delivering more money every month to 9 out of 10 Canadian families and lifting hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty. They should be supporting our plan to invest in infrastructure, including housing, to make sure that Canadians have opportunities to afford their homes and live in safety. They should be supporting our plan, our national housing strategy that will reduce poverty right across the country. It's unfortunate they stick to the rhetoric instead of siding with us on action.
The honourable member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix. The Prime Minister once again called attention to himself with his disrespectful comments. He mentioned that an influx of male workers in rural areas of Canada would have an adverse social impact. For years now, seasonal workers have been coming to our rural areas, stimulating the economy, without anyone complaining about it. Instead of asking how we should adjust and adapt, shouldn't the Prime Minister be celebrating the fact that Canada can tap into this source of skilled workers? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we will always defend our workers and take steps to boost economic growth. We are currently creating the highest level of economic growth in the G7. Last year, we were at the lowest unemployment rate in 40 years, and we recognize that government decisions may have different impacts on different communities and groups. That's something we understand full well. Unfortunately, the Conservatives do not appear to understand the impact of the decisions they made when they were in government.
Lethbridge.
Speaker, the Prime Minister likes to talk about social impact of male workers. So let's start by looking at him. Let's talk about the social impact that he's had by his inaction on the energy file. Let's talk about the massive job losses, the growing rate of suicides in the province of Alberta. Let's talk about parents who can't afford to cover their mortgage or pay for their children's school supplies. Now, let's talk about the social impact of hard-working construction men. Let's talk about the fact that these men work hard to provide for their families, that they pay taxes and that they support the local community. Mr. Speaker, my question is simple. Why is the Prime Minister insisting on launching a visceral attack against these hardworking men?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, for 10 years, Conservatives failed our country, failed our construction workers, failed the oil patch workers by not being able to create economic growth, by not being able to create the kinds of jobs that were needed, and by not being able to get our resources to new markets other than the United States. We are turning that around, Mr. Speaker. We're moving forward on getting resources to markets done in the right way. We are investing in projects that are growing our economy. We are delivering the lowest unemployment rates in 40 years. That's the work we're...
The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it's unbelievable to watch this Prime Minister refuse to acknowledge that his arrogant and self-righteous comments are an insult to tens of thousands of Canadians who work in construction in our communities across the country. He sits on his high horse and with innuendo and stereotype throws stones at these good men and women. Mr. Speaker, I want to invite the Prime Minister to apologize. Will he stand in his place, do the right thing, and apologize to construction workers across the country?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, once again, the divisive rhetoric and attacks from the Conservatives serve to undermine the important work that is being done in communities right across this country to strengthen our resilience, to support everyone, and to make sure that everyone has safe work environments and a positive path to walk on and to live. These are the kinds of things we're going to continue working on, and we are going to continue to recognize the hard work that continues to need to do to make sure that every Canadian can contribute to building a stronger economy.
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's statement was a clear attack on some of the hardest working Canadian and dedicated Canadians. So for the Prime Minister to directly attack these men and insinuate that they are dangerous to women in rural communities is unconscionable and diminishes the high office that he holds. Not to mention, people in groping glass houses should not throw stones. So again, will the Prime Minister stand and apologize for what he said to construction workers?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we take very seriously the responsibility of creating safe workplaces, of supporting all people in communities to ensure that they have opportunities to contribute, opportunities to find good jobs, opportunities to grow their communities in safety and security. That is something we are going to continue to focus on. I will take no lessons from the Conservative Party on how to build safer, more inclusive communities.
The Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay.
Speaker, when it comes to issues of ethics and security, this Prime Minister keeps playing a busted flush. Like his bizarre claim that nobody in the PMO knew anything about the fact that the member for Brampton West was being followed by the RCMP here at Parliament and being mentioned in wiretaps on terrorism financing and money laundering. Well, here's the thing. The Ethics Commissioner has confirmed he's willing to look into whether the MP misused his position on the Finance Committee to ask leading questions about how to evade a money laundering investigation. So let's try this one more time. Is the Prime Minister sticking with his story that there were no adults around him to pay any attention to these ethical and security debacles?
The right Honourable Prime Minister.
I can confirm that there were never any allegations made against any member from Brampton West.
The Honourable Member for South Okanagan West Kootenay.
Mr. Speaker, the fall economic update showered big business with tax breaks while doing little for small business. Now, I'm proud to represent one of Canada's major wine and spirit producing areas. Small craft distillers are proposing a reduction in excise tax for producers of less than 100,000 litres. And a similar move in the U.S. dramatically boosted their industry, with each new distillery creating 20 to 100 new jobs. Can we count on this government to support small business by supporting this proposal? Good idea.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, over the next 2 days, I will be sitting down with premiers in a First Minister's meeting. Indeed, one of the third or fourth First Minister's meeting. We're doing one every single year because I believe in pulling together with First Ministers so we can talk about a broad range of issues that they want to talk about. A reminder that the previous government didn't like First Minister's meeting and tended not to hold them at all. We are going to be talking about a broad range of things, including lowering barriers so that our beer and wine producers across this country can do better.
The Honourable Member for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, I represent the watershed community of Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge. It is important to those in my riding that we are able to protect wild salmon stocks and restore their habitats. While some species are slowly returning, we are currently lacking the tools and resources to make the changes needed. Can the Prime Minister tell us what measures this government will take, including through the British Columbia Salmon Restoration and Innovation Fund, to help communities such as my own see revitalized salmon populations?
Honourable Prime Minister.
I thank the member from Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge for his hard work towards protecting wildlife on the West Coast. We continue to take real action when it comes to the sustainability of wild Pacific salmon. As we announced in our fall economic statement, we will invest $105 million to create a British Columbia Salmon Restoration and Innovation Fund, which includes a contribution to the Pacific Salmon Endowment Fund of $5 million. These investments will support projects focused on salmon stock protection and the habitat restoration of this iconic species.
Honourable Member for Central Okanagan's Milkmain Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, our allies have spoken, security experts have spoken, now the head of CSIS has spoken. As one of our country's top security officials, he's said publicly that hostile states are targeting our 5G network. Communist Chinese laws are clear. Companies in China must, and I quote, support, cooperate with, and collaborate in national intelligence work, end quote. Huawei will be forced to spy on Canada. Will the Prime Minister commit to ensuring our next generation network is secure and ban Huawei?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government takes very seriously the safety and protection of Canadians, including in cybersecurity and in all related matters. That is why we work with the extraordinary professionals in our security and intelligence services to determine the best way to move forward in growing the Canadian economy, creating new technological innovations, and keeping our country and its infrastructures safe from foreign interference. That is the task that our security and intelligence agencies do extraordinarily well, and we always support them and accept their recommendations.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Chasseur. Well, now, Mr. Speaker, the head of CSIS has warned the Canadian government about the threat of state-sponsored espionage. 3 of the 5 I members have confirmed that Huawei should be banned. We know that our security and economic interests are at risk. Will the Prime Minister act and ban Huawei? Mr. Speaker, CSIS's mandate is to investigate threats to Canada, which can include long-term threats to our international interests. As the CSIS director said, foreign interference and espionage are a significant threat to our national interests and to our prosperity, in collaboration with our international partners. Our intelligence agencies are constantly monitoring these threats and taking appropriate steps to make sure that the rights and safety of Canadians are protected. Mr. Speaker, I'll put an easier question to the Prime Minister. We learned in La Presse this morning that the Montreal police discovered over 900 plants in the home of a couple. While the Prime Minister was doing this investigation, this same couple got a license to produce medical marijuana. Guess what? They got that license after they applied. Will the Prime Minister suspend that license from Health Canada from this couple that is being investigated by the Montreal police? Mr. Speaker, we proceeded to legalize marijuana because we know that it is the best way to protect our children and to eliminate the influence of organized crime in this country. Of course, we are going to make sure that Health Canada and other organizations do any necessary investigations to make sure they make the right decisions when it comes to production licenses.
Well, Mr. Speaker, again, a failure of the Prime Minister to take responsibility. Last year, Montreal police discovered 977 pot plants and more than $15,000 on the premises of a couple in Montreal. This year, despite the ongoing criminal investigation of the couple, Health Canada gave them a permit to grow more than 600 cannabis plants for medical purposes. Are you kidding? These people were under investigation for illegal cannabis for the purpose of trafficking, but got a license to grow pot. You can't make this stuff up. Will the Prime Minister revoke this license while the police investigation is ongoing?
You're right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, ensuring the integrity of Canada's legal cannabis production system is a top priority for our government. That's why the regulated system contains multiple measures to protect the health and safety of Canadians and the integrity of the system. These include stringent requirements around physical and personal security, record-keeping, inventory controls, and reporting that are verified by Health Canada inspections. Our government will never hesitate to take appropriate action to protect the integrity of our legal cannabis system.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, since the sordid murder of Jamal Khashoggi, Germany and many of our other allies have shown true leadership and have stopped selling arms to the Saudi regime. Over the same period of time, for about 6 weeks, the Prime Minister has been saying that his government is reviewing
current permits for export to Saudi Arabia. Once again, can the Prime Minister tell this House what the status of this review is? Thank you. The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are continuing to review permit exports, but I can assure this House that when I was in Argentina for the G20 summit, I had an opportunity to meet the Saudi prince, and I told him that there had to be a better response to this murder than they had given to date. And we expect that he will do this and that he will also instill a ceasefire in Yemen in order to protect these citizens who are experiencing a terrible crisis. We must help that country, and we must remain firm with Saudi Arabia. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, more and more people are using different kinds of transportation and active transportation. But in my regions, there have been the highest number of cyclist deaths in the country. Many people died. 32 cyclists died in Montreal. Every time a cyclist dies, a white bicycle is put where that accident took place. But I can't stand this anymore. I don't ever want to have to put park a white bicycle ever again. Can the Minister of Transport assure that we will implement the recommendations of the Safety Committee? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are committed to improving road safety. Harper's Conservatives were absent from this file for 10 years. The working group undertook broad consultations in 2017-18 throughout all these cities, Montreal, Vancouver, Halifax, Toronto. Our government, as well as provincial governments, are analyzing concrete possibilities to make our roads safer for pedestrians and cyclists. We will act. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, Canadians know full well that the Prime Minister spends very quickly, and he's very quick to tweet too, especially when he's iPhone. He sent a few years ago a tweet out that cost billions of dollars to Canadians. Now, once again, a week ago, the Prime Minister announced through Twitter that the Canadian government would take $50 million of taxpayers' money to support an organization headed by a celebrity. Does he not know that that's not what Twitter is for? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's funny to see what the Conservatives do when they're playing political games. They're opposing funding that will help 340,000 children stay in school, that will help children in conflict regions, that is helping the poorest of children in the world. It's unfortunate that this is the new philosophy of the Conservatives. People all around the world must have equal opportunity when it comes to learning, when it comes to top quality education, and we will always support those kinds of measures. It's so unfortunate that the Conservatives are playing political games and opposing this.
The Honourable Member for
Order.
Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, Yasmin Sharif is the former director of a group that promotes anti-Israel propaganda in the BDS movement. Today, she's the director of Education Cannot Wait, the recent recipient of a $50 million tweeted pledge by this Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, this House has rejected BDS and the xenophobia that it promotes. In 2016, even the Prime Minister has recognized that BDS is anti-Semitic. Will the Prime Minister withdraw this funding promise and support the Jewish community and our allies in Israel, or is he more concerned with impressing his celebrity friends?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are so eager to play politics, it puts them in the awkward position of actually opposing funding that will support nearly 340,000 of the world's most vulnerable children in conflict and crisis zones to stay in school. It is unfortunate that this is the new Conservative philosophy. Children around the world must have equal access to quality education and learning opportunities. This is something that we will always support. Unfortunately, the Conservatives have been consistent. They would rather play politics than help the world's most vulnerable.
Honourable Member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that the Prime Minister loves to swagger on social media, but his tweet to Trevor Noah took the cake. A $50 million donation on Twitter, with some of it going to UNRWA. Speaking of UNRWA, Mr. Speaker, I didn't see the Prime Minister tweet about the earlier $50 million donation he made to that agency. Hey, Trevor Noah, I'm donating $50 million to an organization that supports anti-Semitism, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister withhold his donation to UNRWA until that organization denounces anti-Semitism?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, the Conservatives choose to play political games instead of actually looking at how we're working hard as Canadians to support the world's most vulnerable. The fact that we continue to work with UNRWA allows us to hold into account to ensure proper accountability on where they spend their money and how they spend their money, because we know that we need to support the most vulnerable in the world as opposed to continue to have negative outcomes and funding the wrong sorts of people. Having Canadian dollars there leads to more accountability, and that is something that the entire world values.
The honourable member for Cambridge.
Mr. Speaker, our government is committed to building a Canada where all people, regardless of their disability, can fully participate and be included in society. We are acting and have undertaken major initiatives to create an inclusive and accessible Canada.
Hear, hear.
As chair of the Committee for the Status of Persons with Disabilities, I am extremely proud of our government's work. Could the Prime Minister please update this House on our government's historic progress in this area?
Great question.
Honourable Prime Minister.
I thank the member from Cambridge for his hard work as chair of the Committee for Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. We are creating a system whereby barriers are identified and removed proactively so that all Canadians, regardless of their disability, can fully participate in society. I am proud that last week this House unanimously supported our legislation to ensure a barrier-free Canada. This shows how, when we truly work together, we can have a direct and lasting impact on the lives of Canadians.
The honourable member for Oshawa.
Mr. Speaker, actions speak louder than words. The Prime Minister promised that he would work on a plan to keep jobs in Oshawa, but Monday, Mr. Speaker, Liberals voted down our motion to study the impact of the GM closure. Instead of caring, the Prime Minister still hasn't even picked up the phone, called our Mayor to offer his support. The PM said that we need to transition away from manufacturing. Well, Mr. Speaker, my community wants to know, what does he think we should transition to? Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister table his plan for the affected Oshawa workers before Christmas?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are focusing on the workers and their families who are going through a difficult time and need the support of every member in this House. When I spoke last week with the Premier of Ontario, we agreed that this was a time to put partisanship aside and focus on how to support the workers in Oshawa. From day one, we have taken steps to make Canada's automotive manufacturing sector more globally competitive and innovative. We will always stand firmly behind our automotive sector and workers.
The honourable member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Quebec government confirmed that Netflix will collect the QST starting the 1st of January 2019, but not the GST. Ottawa refuses to change federal legislation and refuses to collect GST from California multinational web giants, but it does collect it from our businesses. Quebec has explicitly asked the federal government to work with it in order to change the law, but it was turned down. We're the last of the G7 countries to refuse to adapt our tax regime to the age of the Internet. What other phony excuse will the minister give us to defend the indefensible? Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we do not want to increase taxes for Canadians. We understand the importance of an arts and culture sector, and we have invested more than $3.2 billion in creativity and our artists, the highest investment in history. We have doubled the Arts Council budget, and we have reinvested over $600 million into CBC, and we have added millions of dollars to the Media Fund. We are proud of supporting our artists and our creators, and we will continue to do that.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, the situation surrounding methamphetamine use in my riding and in the Prairie provinces is growing and affecting many individuals, families, and communities. I am proud that the City of Winnipeg has launched a task force to look at solutions to address the current situation. I would like to ask the Prime Minister what are the actions the government is taking and intends to take to address the use of methamphetamine in Canada. The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Winnipeg Centre for his important question and for his leadership on this issue. We are deeply concerned about increased methamphetamine use in Canada, particularly in the prairie provinces. As part of Budget 2018, our government announced a $150 million fund to help provinces and territories increase access to treatment services. And we are very pleased to see that the City of Winnipeg has formed a working group and that a senior Health Canada official is participating to find solutions. We'll continue to work with all our partners to take further action.
Bill.
This Friday, the government is required to submit a plan to Parliament on how it plans to bring justice to those who survived genocide at the hands of ISIS terrorists. Never again means taking concrete action to bring those who are complicit in genocide to justice. Will the Prime Minister table this report on Friday, and will it include concrete action to monitor, gather information to prosecute, and restrict the activities of ISIS terrorists who are in Canada?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
We'll be pleased to be putting forward that report on Tuesday. Our government has proven to be a global leader in welcoming refugees, and we have more than doubled Canada's refugee numbers. We have provided a new home to more than 1,400 women and their families who endured the brutality of Daesh, 85% of whom are Yazidi. And we are not stopping there. We will continue to expedite privately sponsored applications as well as support family reunification. We've also announced further funding of $20 million in Budget 2018 to expand our refugee programming targeting women and girls.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe de Lille. Mr. Speaker, Ottawa never questioned the motives of the Quebec government when it unilaterally decided to increase its immigration levels. Now, the government of Quebec has been elected with a clear mandate to reduce immigration levels in 2019, and we expect, once again, that Ottawa will not question the will of Quebecers. Can the Prime Minister assure Quebec that it will fully collaborate in its efforts to reduce the number of newcomers, including in those categories selected by the federal government? The Right Honourable the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I have already stated, we will work with the Quebec government to make sure that we can figure out together the best way to work together. But I would like to assure Canadians and Quebecers that I have heard their concerns about the labour shortage. I have heard the Conseil du Patronat du Québec. I have heard business owners in Rouyn-Noranda and elsewhere on the labour shortage. And we know that a lower level of immigration can lead to a lower economic growth. We want to contribute to economic growth in Quebec and throughout Canada, and we will work with all the governments involved.
The attention of honourable members, the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Ginny Sims, Minister of Citizen Services for the province of British Columbia. And the Honourable Bruce Ralston, Minister of Jobs, Trade and Technology for the province of British Columbia. Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition is rising on a point of order.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm wondering if I can get unanimous consent for the following motion. That given, well, I'll hear it first, it's pretty good. That given Canadians must be in control of their borders and have full sovereignty over their immigration system and refuse to allow the government to continue to cede this control to authorities beyond our borders, that the government has allowed over 38,000 people to illegally enter Canada from the United States and abuse our asylum system at a cost of over $1 billion, thereby compromising the integrity of our borders and immigration system. That the House call on the government to refrain from signing Canada onto the UN Global Compact on Migration, secure our borders, and fix the mess the Prime Minister has created.
Does the Honourable Leader of the Opposition have unanimous consent? No, there is no unanimous consent. It being 3:13 p.m., pursuant to order made on Thursday, November 29, 2018, the House will now